I'm Terry Nunn.
I'm David Diamond.
I'm John Crawford. We are Berlin, and you are watching Eclectic Arts. Lucky for you.
What a lovely introduction. You're so nice.
That human connection should not ever be taken for granted, and that it can be taken away.
The right amount of weird where I'm like, I want it. I want it.
Obviously, it's a thing. It's like an ABBA train.
How are there only 4 episodes of this?
Being very intentional with my art, with like the visual and the emotion behind it.
You just need sitting and just
crying.
and sitting and crying. Oh, how it feels.
Alice, thank you again for connecting us.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
That doesn't necessarily mean that even that last step won't get drawn out for years.
You think you're seeing something, but you're actually seeing something else.
And you're watching Eclectic Arts.
Jagged little heart, wide open the start, all your broken parts are part of your life. Love the way you are, beating with the stars, all your broken parts are perfectly fine. 'Cause I'm the woman, yes I am, this is my world. I'll tame the lion, man I can make that bitch roar. I got love, I got soul, I'm the king upon my throne, I am the woman.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media, based in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. My goodness, only got this month and next month, and then goodbye to this year. I would like to say that this is live stream number 298. I started all this virtual work back on May 22nd, 2020. So we're just 2 away from hitting a magical number 300. And speaking of which, what I have coming up is my next scheduled live stream is next Monday, which is the 7th. And I have a wonderful musical duo joining me for the first time. And I do have another live stream scheduled for the 18th of November, which is a Friday. And there might be something in between there, but those 2 are definitely going to happen. So potentially my guest on the 18th will be number 300, or maybe there'll be 301, 302. I'm not really sure. I'm very much looking forward to speaking to that guest because they are a returning guest. This will be their 3rd appearance with me, and they're from my really my favorite TV show called Yellowstone, which is on Paramount. Shameless plug. Their 5th season starts on the 13th of November. And so this cast member is going to come back and speak to me about those premiere episodes. Ooh, so stay tuned. If you want to know more details of when things are actually planned and here's what's coming up and here's who that guest is, please follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If this is your first time joining me on my YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That helps out with the algorithm. And YouTube recently changed a lot of things, including just the layout and other things that they have going on with their interface. So every subscription helps and every notification bell helps me. And if you're on the Twitch side of things, where I started all of this, again, virtual work 2 years and some change ago, please follow me over there and I will try to follow you back. Again, that's where I started all of this back on May 22nd, 2020. And yeah, I'm just glad to be back. I definitely want to thank my last guest, which was Abby Fuller, wonderful film director, producer. I love talking to her about her film and some of her previous work, especially working on MTV's True Life series. Something I used to watch back in the day. So that was great to hear some of the stories of how she did her 2 episodes of that series. And yeah, so I'm really excited to talk to my guest today because she is also returning. So let's get to things. My guest today first joined me on October 17th of last year. She has been working hard, releasing singles and music videos, culminating in a brand new album release, Scars of Venus. Please welcome back to the Eclectic Arts Media Virtual Studio, Miss Kelly Monrow. And I'm so used to touching things with my finger.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you? Thanks for having me back.
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, thanks for coming back. It's crazy to think it's been a little over a year.
I was just thinking that when you said that. Oh my God, it really has been 1 year. That's wild.
It was. I had to look it up to find out. I was like, I don't think it was that. I kept scrolling back. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a
That's
while.
insane. That feels like literally a month ago. And you know what's crazy is, remember I told you back in October, I said, I've got a lot cooking and I'm going to put out an album next year and it will probably be in exactly 1 year. And I dropped it on October 10th.
Yep, there it is. Everything that you said, that was exactly true. And I can't wait to talk and hear more about it, because I think when we first connected last year, I think it was Mama Said was the song that was out, if I remember right.
Yeah, that was my first single out.
Yeah, and then like I mentioned in my intro, you've had other singles, other music videos, and now the full album's out as of last month. You've been playing live shows, so we're going to dig into this as much as we can.
Cool.
Okay, so let's start with Scars of Venus. What's the meaning behind the title?
Great question. I wanted to name the album something, these collection of songs are really all about kind of my process, especially through the pandemic, about kind of the emancipation and like cutting ties of all the kind of like self-inflicted pain that I put myself through. Like everything from, we go through our childhoods, and some of us have trauma. We all have trauma to some degree, but we go through all of these events in life, right? And a lot of the time, sometimes trauma is imposed upon us, but a lot of the time it's in our mind, and we're really the one that is completely in control of changing and manifesting our future. And so I think as I kind of grew into my womanhood through the pandemic and through everything that I went through, everything got really quiet. I went through the hard times like we all did during the pandemic. And it was kind of me getting out of my own way. And a lot of these songs are about either falling back into love, breaking the chain of the kind of, again, that self-inflicted pain that we put upon ourselves, letting go of relationships, changing environments to grow. So again, like long story short, Scars of Venus is all about, I remember studying Venus, which is the goddess of love and grace and elegance. And I thought to myself, even she has scars, right? We all have scars and wounds from our past. And I remember thinking, like, what makes us really beautiful is actually those scars and the things that we've actually been through. That's to me what really has built me as a woman. It's not perfection, and it's not being this idealistic, beautiful creature. It's actually the scars and like the little marks on someone's face, the little traumas, the little things that we've been through in life that actually accumulate into what I call beauty now. So that was a big part of the title for me. And also, Venus is like at the top of my chart. It gets kind of heady. There's a lot of little ins and outs to it. I actually have, several scars on my body too that I used to be, ashamed of, that I would try to hide. And so now I've just like learned to embrace them. And again, kind of really learning to love ourselves was kind of what this album is all about.
Wow,
it's a lot.
Yeah.
You're like, I need a cocktail, okay?
Yeah, I need one right now. But what I love about that is there's so much intention behind the album title, like you just mentioned, that the scars and things that happened during the pandemic, and also things earlier than the pandemic for yourself and for everyone else out there. And yet it's kind of helped you turn into the Venus part of things. And it wasn't just like, oh, I think this sounds like a fun album title, so we're just going to go with that. It's like, no, there's so much more behind it. And I think we talked about this the first time a year ago, that the intention with your art is something that I always gravitate towards artists that are like that. And you would think that most do, but some don't have nearly as much as others. And clearly, you've got a lot of things going on that help get you to where you're at now. I know for myself, I can relate to the whole aspect of trying to accept change. And that can actually be something better. And yeah, I definitely I've got some scars on me for sure. And I think I've grown from those, and those have actually kind of pushed me into a direction that actually worked out pretty well. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, this is just so overwhelming, and I'm just gonna stick my head in the sand for a bit and just hope it goes away. And when it doesn't, it's like, well, what are you gonna do, Mark? Are you gonna sit there and just wallow in this, or are you gonna try to build off of it and do something more positive?
Yes, it's so true. I actually I heard this during COVID, during the pandemic, and I think it's kind of what shifted everything for me. I heard someone say, whatever you're hiding, wherever you're hiding, is probably like one of your greatest gifts. And it was like so simple, but it was so profound. And I remember telling you a year ago, Mark, like, my voice was a big thing I ran from and hid. And it's just so funny now. So the Scars of Venus, title really, every day I learn more kind of definitions of what I actually intended behind, what the intention was behind it. It's kind of funny, but.
Well, and I would also think too that as you've got a chance to put the music out for people to hear, but then also when you get to, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but when you start performing it live in front of people, that's a whole different animal than listening to it with your headphones on, or through your phone or whatever. That live experience is totally different, and we'll get to that in a second. But I want to stay with the album. And one song that I liked when I was listening to it, and I thought it was kind of interesting that this, I believe, is going to be a video release this week, is "Ain't Mine." So what can you tell me about that song? Because that was one that really kind of stood out on the album to me.
Yeah, this was such a fun song to make. This was kind of I've always been obsessed with Erykah Badu, and I wanted to do kind of a funky song just about, we all hit that point in our lives where we're like, excuse my language, but like, fuck it. Like, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing anymore. I don't want to try to do the Jones way, we all call it. I tried that and it failed, right? Like, I got married super young. I got divorced. Like, it didn't work. And it wasn't that any of those paths are right or wrong. It's just I didn't listen to myself. And so this song that I wrote is all about like kind of getting back on track with really staying in tune to like what is your truth and what is your inner authentic path, and then really marching wildly in that and being triumphant in that. And so, part of the lyrics say, I'm not living in the fast lane doing it the Jones way. That shit ain't mine. I'm done with it. And so there were kind of two parts to this song. One was, we all have taken on other people's stuff, and to the point where you either get burned out or you don't know how to set a boundary or whatever. And then you end up resenting them or you end up whatever. So I had to learn that the hard way. So part of the song is, that shit ain't mine, it's yours. I'm not going to do that anymore. And then also just the path of life. Like, I'm not going to do it what anybody else, the way that everyone else thinks I should do it. I'm going to do it the way that feels most authentic to me. So it's kind of two parts to that song, but incredibly fun song to write. And it's definitely got some swagger to it for sure.
Yeah, no, I like the swagger, and I particularly like the raw version that you have, since there's two versions of it. And I think now that I know the kind of the meaning behind the lyrics and that song, it's definitely something again that I can relate to, because I had some people that were giving me some crap about some of the guests that I was interviewing just because they didn't like the field that they came from. So we're talking about the adult industry. I've talked to a few people from that industry. And they were messaging me talking about, Mark, is that all you're going to do now? How come you're not talking to musicians anymore? How come you're not talking to film people? I said, no, I'm talking to like everybody still, and I'm doing what I want to do. But then I'm not going to lie, those thoughts did kind of get into my head a little bit of like, well, maybe I should do what these people are saying and kind of get away from. I was like, well, then I said, well, like, you just fuck it. No, I'm going to do what I want to do. And, if you don't like it, you don't like it, then so be it. But this is what feels right to me. And every guest has been treated with the exact same respect that I give any guest, doesn't matter what field they're from. And those people, in my opinion, personal opinion, have been wonderfully interesting people to talk to. So
yeah, I mean, it takes all kinds of kinds, right? Like growing up in the South, we used to say that. It's like, and also, I think one beautiful thing about being an artist, it doesn't matter what lane you're in, you can't make art without being authentic. And like, people can sniff that out, right? So it's like, unless you really listen to yourself, you're the only one that really knows the answer. And you just have to do what feels good. And everybody else can, they don't have to listen. That's where I'm at with it. And trust me, a lot of people won't listen to my music, and that's okay. That's okay.
We share a common mentality then of like, and you're right. I think you're very, very right about when it comes to artists, that if you're not being authentic or genuine to yourself, and someone's listening to it or watching it or whatever the medium is, they know. They can just say, you're basically putting on a front or a face just so that you can hope to get more views or more sales or more streams or more whatever, but you're not really like presenting yourself to me. And so I'm just going to move right on to the next artist. Yeah, it is, and I think that's probably something. Even like listening to all the songs on the album, that all of your songs are going to have intention that you do. There's always interesting stories behind the lyrics, and I think, quite honestly, all of them have some level of swag to them. Doesn't matter. You could probably be singing like just an acapella, yeah, like an acapella.
I mean, every one of those songs. You know what's interesting, Mark? I had to choose 12 songs. I mean, it was like really difficult. I've got more that I'm gonna put out, but these 12 really, in my opinion, like told a story. And talk about intention. I mean, every single one of these songs I wrote with so much love and so much, you know, just experience and everything else I've been through. So every single one has a specific story. And in fact, Ain't Mine, the music video drops tomorrow, which is super fun. And yeah, I tried to make the video. You guys will see in the video. It's like, I'm so weird. I'm so weird. It's so fun though. It's the weirdest video you'll ever see in your life, but it's fun.
Well, I'm intrigued now.
Yeah, I'm like biting into a lemon, like making a sour face. I'm hiding in a tree. I'm just doing all sorts of funky shit. But
and were these your ideas, or are these like the director's ideas, or where
oh,
they come from?
I produced and directed the video by myself. Yeah, so it was super fun.
Okay, so it's all you then.
All me. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, like I always tell people, there's good weird and there's kind of like odd weird, and and I think there's a lot of good weird in the world.
There is, and like I think it's the point of the video was, you know, you can. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like, okay, she's a cute girl, she's a pretty girl. Okay, she's got depth. Okay, whatever. It's like, how many times can you do a video where it's like, okay, she's female. How many different lanes can we go down as a female? Okay, you can do, you know, like pink, punk, rebel, badass chick. You can do the sexy, like Shakira, J-Lo thing. You can do the, you know, the punk band, weird. I mean, there's like different lanes, but I was like, what is this? How does this song connect to me? And again, I think it's just going back to like, I'm a little bit of everything. And I also don't feel like I can even pick a lane on this song because it's talks about how I just kind of beat to my own drum and I'm doing it my own way. So I just kind of did little clips and snippets of like my everyday life. So you'll see how weird I am. It's cool.
Okay. Well, yeah, and it sounds like you're staying with the theme of the song.
Yes.
So it's like, you know, I'm going to do the video the same way. So like, if you think it's weird or I'm weird or you don't get it, and that's okay, because that's not what, this is what I'm presenting to you.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I'm kind of curious too that with the songs on the album, most of them, if not all of them, coming from personal experience or scars as you were during your lifetime or during the pandemic, was there any particular like one song or maybe even a couple songs that were like really, really tough to kind of get together because they were so personal and so maybe so scarring to you that you're like, man, this is going to be a rough one to get to fruition. I want to, but it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I actually think Ain't Mine, the raw version, the one that you spoke to. I mean, when we recorded that was pretty difficult for me. I think the instrumental, kind of the more swagger track of Ain't Mine was fun and cheeky. But when you shift into that, you know, the piano version and you get to the raw instrumentation of it, I think we've all been pushed in our lives to the point where you're just done. You know, you're not even angry or bitter. You're just done with somebody, and there's a lot of grief in that. And so this song, the lyrics totally shifted into that scenario for me, where, you know, you grow up. Well, for me, it was like, not to get too therapeutic and deep, but like, you know, if you're codependent upon somebody or you've been living your life for somebody else, and then all of a sudden you decide, like, I'm going to take my power back and I'm going to like separate from that, that song hits totally different. So that one was very emotional for me. And I think you can hear it in my voice. I think my voice quivers a few times because we did one pass on that. Like I literally did that. And I think we did 2 passes, but yeah, that was we wanted to keep that as raw as possible. And then, you know, I think Wake Up was probably pretty intense for me as well. And that song is all about just, you know, again, during the pandemic, I think we all had to kind of take a close look at like patterns. And I actually wrote that song for one of my girlfriends who struggles with addiction. And she's got some like mood disorder stuff. And, you know, let's face it, we've all dabbled in some form of like, oh shit, I need to take a close look at myself on this. And for me, during the pandemic, you know, there were phases where it was drinking too much, or, you know, it was just the patterns of behavior that I was doing, you know. And I think we all have something in our lives, or we have someone in our lives where it's like, when are you going to wake up? You know, you go on this ride and you get on this roller coaster and you can't stop. And it's like, when am I going to wake up and just stop doing it? And there's one line in that song that always really gets me, even though it's so simple. I'm calling on the angels by their name. I swear I'll make that change. But how many times, you know, until I wake up? And so whatever that means for each person, but that song holds a lot of sentiment to me as well. Yeah.
Okay. That's with both of the songs and things that you just talked about. It's interesting to me that with Ain't Mine, the raw version that you said that you did 2 passes at it. So it's kind of like, I need to basically just sing this, you know, from my soul and get it out and not try to sit there and edit it together and, you know, that kind of thing, which you can do nowadays, or even back in the old days with tape. But that to really capture it, it's like, no, I gotta put myself out there. You know, that raw, to put it out there. And if my voice starts to quiver, if I start to break during it, if that captures what I'm going for, then you leave it that way.
Yep. That was a really strong request of mine for that song. Yeah, so that's why, I mean, I literally called it raw version, because it was, you know, we wanted to just keep it as it was.
This kind of begs the question, and maybe it's a little bit of a good segue. Have you performed that version live anytime soon, or at those concerts you've done, or do you plan in the future? Do you think you're up to doing that raw with a piano?
Oh yeah, I would love to do that song. I have not done that one yet. The only piano version of any song I've done so far has just been Wide Open, which was one of my first. It was on that original EP. It's a more country song. But that one, I've gotten incredible feedback on. I have not done Ain't Mine raw though. I think that would be really great. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, as I mentioned in my intro, you've been playing live shows. And I know, being a musician myself, you know, what a different animal that is from being in the studio. And I like both. So what were those first shows, or maybe even like the first show when you're on stage doing your set? What was that like?
Oh my gosh. I mean, okay, first of all, the singing live versus recording, it's just like 2 completely different pieces of art. And to the point where I was like, yeah, like I feel really confident in the recording studio. You know, it's like you're in your little safe cubby zone. You've got your headphones on, the microphone's right here. You know, you feel really safe and you're like killing it. You only have to do 2 takes. And then live, it's like there's so many external sources and things you have to rely on that you have no control over. So it's like the monitor, you know, your in-ears don't work, you know, because the venue's too small and the monitor isn't working. You can't hear the left side, and the drummer's behind you and it's blaring, and there's so many factors. So to answer your question, it was hilarious because the first show I did was in Nashville, and you know, we were like selling a lot of tickets to all the other shows and everything was going really great. And of course I was headlining these shows, and out of the gate, you know, I'm a new artist, and it's a lot of pressure to try to carry that load. And it was a great lesson of humility. My first show in Nashville, it was like, you know, a 300 person venue, and there were like maybe, I don't even know, a handful of people there. Like it wasn't anything I thought it was going to be. And so no one prepared me for that. Vocally, I get on stage performance wise, like I feel like I'm an actress. I can carry that and I can hold my own. But nobody prepared me for the ego hit that I was going to feel when there were literally 20 people in the room in a 400 person venue. However, I will say the shows did grow, and they got, you know, we had 100 plus, you know, 120 plus in Austin, 150, you know, it was great. But the one lesson I really learned is like not only humility, but I learned like you should always be grateful for one person buying a ticket and one person coming. And that's really what I noticed, because the first show in Nashville, even though there weren't a lot of people there, there was one girl that came up to me after the show and she said, hey, you know, when you were singing the song Wounds, that song really like hit me and it really affected me. And I remember thinking, wow, like I'm such a shithead for like thinking that there weren't enough people there when I affected this one person that did buy a ticket and did show up for me. So I've learned so many lessons from it, and so many great, you know, it was such a great experience. I'm just getting started, but definitely a freaking ride. I mean, I understand now how like rock stars, like literally, it's like such an adrenaline rush. I'm like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. It's such a ride. And then when it's done, it's just like a dopamine crash. You're just like, oh, how do I get it back? It's so cool. Super fun.
Yeah, and I've only done it on a small level, but it's exactly that. It doesn't matter if you're playing to, say, like we're playing in coffee shops and breweries to 50 people, but if when the gig's going well and you feel so good about it, and people want to talk to you afterward and have such a great time, and then maybe like by 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning it starts to wear off, and then I'm like, you get hit such a low. It's like, yeah, I see why these guys were doing drugs and doing whatever, because they were trying to maintain this whole high that you can't do. You can't play live 24 hours a day. So it's like, you got to do this whole roller coaster thing.
Yeah. And Mark, I'll tell you too, I had my last show of the series. So I had a 5-show kind of showcase, if you will, kind of little concert showcase. And so my 5th show was the very same week that the album dropped. So it was like I was losing 2 babies, like 2 of these big things that were happening. And then all of a sudden they were both just done. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? It was such a weird feeling. Such a weird feeling.
I can relate to that too. When you've been working so hard at something and you're so happy to get to that point, and here it is for everybody to consume and take in. And then you're kind of like, and sometimes it happens from the people that come talk to you, like, so what's coming up next? And you're like, I just spent 3 years on this.
Exactly. But you know, I'm really learning. That's why, especially as an artist, you know, a creative, it's all about the process. Because the minute the album was out and the minute the show was done, I gave myself like 1 or 2 days to feel sorry for myself, you know, like, oh my God. And then it was like, I can't wait to start writing again. I can't wait to start recording again. I can't wait to just get back in the pocket. You know, that's like my sweet spot. And I'm also learning like the end result isn't nearly as satisfying as we like make it up to be. You know, I always thought like, wow, I'm going to put this album out and then it's going to be this like amazing big thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, actually, I just want to get back to work and like do more.
It's kind of weird how that works out sometimes, huh?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and I want to actually go back to when you're talking about your first show, and there's, you know, a handful of people there when you're playing live. It's something that I had told a previous person that I had worked with, that, you know, anytime you get on a stage, even if you're literally not on a stage, you're just on a floor that's, you know, the same level as anybody in the crowd, that you have to treat it like you're playing to 10,000 people, in the sense that you give it everything you got. And it might seem a little awkward to you at the time. I know it did to me when there's like literally five people standing there. But you're like, hey, they took up the time out of their schedule to come out and check out what you're doing. Doesn't matter if they know you or not. And so don't get up there and half-ass it. Get up there and give it everything you got. And like you just said, you know, someone came up to you after your performance and said, wow, that one song Wounds really connected with me. You don't know what what they're feeling from your music, or even what they're going through that day. And then your music made them feel better, just put a smile on their face, or it could be something much, much deeper, like what happened with you. And so you can't ever take it for granted, and you can't assume anything. It's like, no, go out there and do what you're supposed to do, and then see what comes your way from that. Because if you dog it up there, then it's like, you shouldn't even be up there.
Yeah, it's so true. And I actually got chills when you said, like, we never know what someone's going through, even that day or that week or that month or in that moment. If a song, you know, affects or has an effect on somebody that way, it's the gift. It's the gift as an artist. It's the number one thing that I could possibly receive back from what I'm putting out, is just the stories and like captivating somebody or moving someone's heart or reminding them of their greatness. Like, it's the best feeling. And so I've also learned the power of showing up, not only for yourself, but for other people. I used to be, you know, it's like you get flaky, you get lazy, you know, you're like, oh, I'll try to make it to the birthday party, or I'll try to do this. And now after these shows, I'm like, I will show up to your grandmother's aunt's niece's dog's birthday party. I will be there because I know how much it means to have somebody walk through that door and just to support you. It means everything.
It sure does.
Yeah.
I remember one of the gigs we did. My singer and I we're just a duo. We're setting up, and there was like 2 people in this place, and they're like sitting on the outside part away from us, and we're like, you know, talking to each other. Do you think anybody else is going to show up, or not? Did you let anybody else know that, you know, that we're doing this tonight? And for like probably 4 songs, it was just those 2 people out on the patio, you know, far away from us. And I told my singers, you know, let's just have fun with it, like we're supposed to. Get up here and like do what we would normally do. Some other people that we knew eventually came, you know, they came late and that kind of thing. But what was funny was that at the intermission, one of those 2 gals came in before they left and said, thank you so much for playing Roxanne by the Police, because that's actually my name. So I always love that song. And we had no idea. So
that's cool.
To the whole point of like, you know, make sure you do what you're supposed to do and give it 100%, that you just never know. And in that case, it was something kind of fun. You know, it wasn't anything too deep, but we could have easily been dismissive about that. I said, well, shit, there's nobody here.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of go through the motions and get the hell out of here. I was like, well, no, it's like, let's just go and do it like we normally would with, you know, a room full of people.
Yeah.
So, and Carmichael, good to see you. I see you joined the chat. I miss Mark's shows. Well, so do I. It's been what, 6 years? Oh gosh, that's it. Because it was October, I think 26 was the last show my duo played live.
Oh, cool. You should do it. Start it back up. Get that thing popping.
It's trust me, it's crossed my mind more than once. My singer and I are still good friends. She's still in the area, and I want to kind of cautiously approach her to kind of see, make sure she's in a good place. And if she is, see where this is going to go. Because we had big fun. I can't think of one gig where we just like, oh man, that sucked. You know, I don't think any of those were like that.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, it's one of the joys of my life. I mean, this whole writing and singing process, the more you forget about trying to be perfect or do it right, because there's no such thing, and you just allow yourself to be and express. It's like, it's just the biggest joy. It really is.
You know, you're absolutely right. And I'm somebody that's a bit of a perfectionist. I also like to plan ahead. So I kind of like want to know what's coming. And obviously, and you know this from playing live, you can only plan so much.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. You know, there's technical issues, or someone's having a bad day, or your drummer's off beat that day, or whatever's going on. You're in a bad mood, or the crowd sucks, or whatever it is. And you got to roll with it. And that taught me a lot about that. You're like, Mark, you need to loosen up. You need to loosen up a little bit.
Right? Yes. And also what we see as imperfect, somebody else is like, oh, when your voice kind of squeaked, or you did this weird shit with your voice, like that was so badass. And, you know, when you, I had somebody tell me, when you moved across the stage on this one song and you kind of like, you know, went forward, that was so cool. And I was like, I tripped. But like, again, the way that you fake it till you make it, you keep going. Cause like that one person, you know, was like, oh, that was really cool. And I'm like, literally tripped and almost fell on my face.
Yeah, it's perception.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of the shows that we would play, I would be on my electric guitar playing some metal riff stuff, and I would be like in the audience and work my way to the little area that was actually the stage. And all I'm thinking about, oh man, I just fucked up that chord and I fucked up the melody or whatever. And then somebody during the break between our sets was like, man, that was so cool when you came walking through, amongst us. And I'm kind of like, so were you even listening to what I was playing? But again, that perception, they didn't really seem to care. I could have been playing anything. They just thought it was cool that we started that way.
Totally. And you also were out of your mind in that part because you were in your mind thinking. Does that make sense? Like you weren't really present. You were in your mind thinking, but at the same time, it probably allowed you to just move into that without overthinking it and going, oh, I'm going to move over here now and do this. And sometimes that in itself can be cool when you just lose your mind and you're like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Because when you're kind of in that almost like floating headspace where you're not thinking about it, it's just kind of happening.
Yep.
That's when it's like, to me, it kind of gets good. And I think some people kind of also, they kind of pick up on that too. It's like, man, this vibe that you're putting off is really cool. And it's not, this thing that you put on a freaking, thing on the wall and put every little dot, oh, I'm going to do this. And then, in 30 seconds, I'm going to do that. It's like, no, just freaking, this is how I'm feeling today. And I was going to start with this song, but I'm going to start with this riff over here because I feel really kind of in a different kind of mood. And you just kind of roll with it. And it kind of worked because I kind of balanced out my singer that way. Cause that would like mortify her. she needed to be prepared.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's like, how do you feel about changing half the set? No, Mark, no, what are you talking about? I'm trying to gauge the room, as the people come in, you're like, you know what? I think some of these softer songs need to go out and we need more of the heavier ones in. And sometimes vice versa. It will kind of quiet it down sometimes. But that's definitely part of the fun of it. But I think, like you mentioned, like the writing process and being in the studio and doing any kind of recording, you can really get so many layers of creativity and artistry can come from that. So anytime somebody asks, well, do you like playing live or playing in the studio recording? It's like, they're two different things and they're equally wonderful.
It's like having two different children. It really is. It's like, I can only imagine a mother's love. I adore them both. I could never choose.
Absolutely. And something that kind of popped in my head, Kelly, was that, as you mentioned the first time a year ago when we were talking, that you didn't like your voice and that type of thing. Did you have confidence when you got on stage and sang that first night in Nashville?
No. No, I'm not even going to lie. No. I mean, when they called me and said, do you want to do these shows? I was like, I'm not ready. I need to practice. I need to rehearse with my band. I need to put together the band. And he was like, you got to just go. You got to just go. Like, you're going to make mistakes. But he kind of threw me to the wolves. Friend of mine, Tommy, who helped me book these shows. But so to answer your question, no, I was not confident. I was not feeling ready. But again, it's about that showing up piece, like I knew I had enough people in my life telling me like, hey, you got to pursue this. Right. And I finally got to a point in my own life where I'm like, I love myself enough to show up for myself. And it's really not about anybody else. It's just about allowing myself to get up there and express myself unapologetically. And I was very nervous. And that first night, I probably did great. Probably wasn't like the best show in the world. But after that, I was kind of like, every show's getting better. And it's just like, it's like compounded interest, right? Like on a bank account or like pennies in a bank. It's like, you got to keep putting the change in and you got to keep putting it in and putting in the work. That's how every day is compounded on the next day, right? It's not like overnight you just turn into a freaking rock star, or a country music star. You got to bust your ass and you got to put in the work. And, I do remember, I can't even remember who it was, but it was somebody was interviewing Dolly Parton and, she said, overnight success takes 20 years, it took me 400 shows to look like I was doing one right, and So I always think about that. It's like, if you really want longevity in this field and you want to be somebody that's making music for a long time, like, you better get your ass up there and fall on your face and put in the blood, sweat, and tears and make mistakes and get laughed at and get booed off stage and get your fans one by one. I mean, that's really the heart of it for me, is showing up for yourself and allowing yourself to completely be terrified and make mistakes.
I love that, because that was the mentality when I started with my last singer, because I'm like, I don't sing, at least back then I didn't sing. I was like, you're the singer, I play guitar, and that's how it is. And it's like, well, at some point I probably should sing some part lead at some point. But that was terrifying to me. I'm absolutely not. And Carmichael, if you're still watching and listening to this, because you were there. I mean, the first show that I actually sang in front of people, like singing lead, I must have had a few drinks, and I was like delaying the inevitable. And like, I was like, hey, let's do this song in the set before we get to that one, because I knew it was my song. And it's like, oh crap, at some point you just have to do it. You can never rehearse enough. You can never be like, I'm going to be ready tomorrow or next week. No, just fucking, like you just said, you got to get up there and just do it. And you will get better, because your intent is going to be to get better. You're going to keep working at it, keep having more attempts at singing. And so that's, to me, it was like, I told her that let's keep on playing gigs. Let's keep on getting, I can't get any better unless I'm in front of an audience, because sitting in my apartment with you, rehearsing stuff is one thing, but being in front of people, it's totally different. And I'd rather be in front of people. So let's do that. And it
Totally.
works.
And also, don't you feel like too, I mean, from what I said in the very beginning, like, give people a chance to not like you. Like, at least put yourself out there to where people go, yeah, she's really not my, for me or whatever. But until you do that, you don't know. You may get a follower, a listener, a fan, a friend, somebody may not like it, but more times than not, people do. And so I had to, it's been a big ego check for me all the way around. Yeah. I've learned a lot of humility this summer, for sure.
Well, yeah, I think, like, and to your point with the story about Dolly Parton, which is awesome, about the took 20 years, and I think any other, whatever you consider successful artists, are going to say the same thing. They had these just in their mind when they look back at it, like, oh my God, that show was terrible, or this performance that I did on stage was just terrible, or the film I was in, or the short film I did, or whatever. That no one came out of the gate stunning. No one.
No.
They all had their pitfalls and traps and things that they try to change. And when you kind of understand that as an artist, no matter how new you are, it's like, this is one of the best things of this format for me, is that when I've had a chance to talk to, especially a lot of the filmmakers, one of the last things I always ask them is about, so what advice would you give like a new budding filmmaker? And almost all of them say, just do it. You've got to get out there. Yeah, you got to get out there and do it. If you sit there and think about it too much and keep delaying it, it just won't happen. So get it out there and keep, molding it and twisting it and kind of, massaging it and whatever you need to do, but at least it's moving somewhere instead of you just kind of sitting around with some thought in your head.
So true.
Yeah. Wow. It's been 43 minutes already.
I know you and I just keep going, and time flies. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. And I love it. So as you mentioned, the music video premieres tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so are there other things in the can from this album, or that are going to be coming down the road, like other music videos, or what are we looking at?
Yeah. I have got 5 music videos total that I'm going to be releasing off this album. We're kind of trying to do it slow, and, look, let's face it. People were like, why the hell are you putting out an album, like a full LP, like an LP? I'm like, people were like, Beyonce does that shit, and like friggin' Taylor Swift, but you're like a new artist. Like, why would you put an entire album out and not drop them as singles? And I was like, because in my mind, I'm a serious artist when I put an LP out. That was really my goal. That's stupid to even say that out loud, but truly, I think this is a collection of songs, right? But it's going to be a slow burn. It's going to take time for people to digest it. There's 12 tracks on this album, and I've heard over time, like some artists put out albums and they didn't get heard for like 20 years. It takes time. So I have a really, I really have zero expectations with like the outcome of this album. Again, it was all for me and for my heart, like speaking my truth and putting myself out there. I really, again, this was like kind of a stepping into my womanhood for myself. And so, it's going to be a slow burn, right? We're going to, put out, 4 more music videos slowly, and kind of let this marinate probably until after the first quarter of next year. And then I'm going to just keep putting out more songs.
Well, it's with me being the old fart that I am, it's so interesting because I forget sometimes that, the modern music market, it's all about singles. For me growing up, it was like, no, where's the album at? And how come you don't put out an album? And I always ask these questions for most musicians about, is there a physical copy? Is there a CD or an album or a tape even? Because those are coming back. And I'm the old school person. I want that because I want to listen to the thing from front to end. I don't want to sit there and just hear a certain song out of it. But I know, again, the market today is not that. It's more like, well, here's this song on Spotify, and then here's the next song.
Well, I've got hard copy CDs that you can buy on Spotify. I think I've got them up there for like $4. I just wanted people to be able to get one. Yeah, hell yeah. You gotta have a hard copy album. You gotta do that. It was actually a dream of mine. I was like, I want a tangible physical album that I can have a front and a back and a inside insert and the whole thing. Yeah, that was a dream of mine, and I want to make a vinyl too. So check, I did it.
See, that's awesome. That's that's no different than when Eclectic Arts started back in 2011. It's just something for fun. I'm like, well, I don't know how to lay out a fanzine or a magazine or whatever, but I'm going to do it, and I want to have something in my hand so when I'm sitting there on the couch, I can flip this thing open. Oh yeah, there's the email interview I did, or there's the phone interview I did with so and so, and I'm actually flipping through the pages and looking at this stuff and reading it. And I can send it to somebody instead of like, oh, go download this PDF from wherever. Yeah, it's like there's nothing, to me, there's nothing better than actually having that tangible experience.
I agree. And I think, hopefully I'll get some decent exposure from this, or if not, that's okay too. But I already have, so that's good. I've gotten some good, some really good feedback, if you will, and some exposure. And so I think there's something to be said about, putting out an album. I think you got to take the shot, you got to do it. And from here, I think I can write songs pretty fast. So I'm excited. I've got a few more in the pipeline. So.
Okay, cool. No, I definitely need to go online then and buy that CD. I didn't realize there was a CD version of it.
Don't buy it. I'll send you a whole, I got plenty. I'll send you a care package.
Well, if you do, I'll make sure it gets on display back here so people actually see it too.
You got it.
I'll connect with you offline about that. And I appreciate the gesture too. That's very nice of you.
Of course.
And
it would be my pleasure for you to have one of my albums. Be my pleasure.
Awesome. I will listen to it front to back. I've already listened to it online, but I will definitely put it in my CD player right over there.
Yes.
I have two other questions before I let you go.
Yes.
One of them was that for me, my background was in hard rock and metal before I got into other genres of music. So a lot of times when there's an intro at the beginning of an album, like we're talking, it's not like your intro of Savage, which is like an actual musical piece. I'm used to hearing something that might be like instrumental or like some kind of brooding thing that goes into the actual song. Yours was really interesting. So I'm wondering where that came from, how that idea came up.
Yeah. My producer, Sinclair, and I, we were done for the day. We were writing. We were exhausted from being in the studio. And we grabbed a couple beers. We went on her porch, and we still had the melody of, we were writing The Woman at the time. And we were kind of we were finishing Go for Gold, I remember now. And we were just being silly like we always do. And I think we were like playing pool and drinking beer. And she shot the ball at the pool table. And I was like, why are you such a bad bitch? And she was like, so savage. And I was like, why you such a bad bitch? And she was like, so savage. And it just stuck. And we had we had that looping from another song that we were working on. I forget what we were doing, but we thought it was so catchy, and we just kept looping it, and we were just, I think by that point we had 4 or 5 beers, and we just thought we were really feeling ourselves. So we were like, yeah, that's gonna be, I was like, that has to be at the beginning of my album, because the whole album is about, just womanhood and empowerment. And I thought female empowerment, but actually, funny enough, I have more men listening to the album than women right now, which is super badass and super cool. But it's just all about empowerment and strength. And I was like, yeah, that just has to be the intro. So we just kind of on a whim came up with that one.
Wow, no, thanks for filling in the backstory to that, because I found it. I mean, it's really cool, but I just found it really unusual because I can't think of an intro that I heard that's like, this sounds like a piece of music that was like intentionally just created to put there, and then bang, it goes right into the album. Versus some of these other ones, it's almost like someone's messing around with a guitar lead or a melody, and then turned into this intro thing, and then it's like, okay, they'll play it on the PA before that, for a concert or something.
Yeah.
Which actually you could do with that. Now I think about it, I mean, you can have that blasting over the PA, and then boom, you come out.
That's how we open the live show.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Score. What are you, a musician?
Yeah, imagine. I've got all kinds of crazy ideas. The other thing that I wanted to bring up before I let you go is that another musician I talked to, I think this was like during the pandemic 2 years ago, and it was not her idea. She was very clear about that, but she borrowed it from other people. But I was wondering about this for you. Whenever the next time that you perform live, would you ever consider doing what she and other artists have done, where audience members will come into, say, like a club that holds 100, 200 people or whatever, and they're handed like a sleep mask. So when they sit down and before you actually play a note, they put the mask on. So all they're doing is hearing you and having the sensory and all the other auditorial things kind of get enhanced because they can't see what's going on the stage.
That's cool. Yeah. Are you asking would I do that?
Yeah. Would you do that?
Sure. I mean, shit. If someone will just come into my show and sit down and listen, I'll do anything. I'll do anything. I'll put a mask on, put earplugs in. I don't give a shit. Just come and listen. Yeah. No, that's super cool. The sensory thing is definitely, wow, I've never heard of that one before. Yeah, I'd totally be down for that.
Yeah, because you have the lyrics in your song, so that's what made me think of that. I think people that have like some really deep lyrical things going on, that kind of experiment really works, because then your ears will start picking up other things within what's coming from the stage, instead of being maybe distracted by the guitar player's doing this or what you're wearing or whatever it is, what facial expression you're making. It's like it goes strictly to here, but you're still getting the energy from a live environment.
That's super cool. I definitely will have to think about that one. That's awesome.
Yeah. So again, it's a compliment to you with your songwriting and everything that you've been doing. That I think that would be a great idea. But well, Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time, and it's so great to catch up with you about a year and some change.
I can't believe that. It's so good to see you again and talk to you as well. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I wish you every success with everything. And anytime you want to come back on, you're always welcome. I love talking with you. Yeah, I love having guests come back. So anyone that's out there watching right now, because I see that number-wise, there are some of you watching right now. So thank you very much for tuning in. And maybe you're a little shy and don't want to be in the chat, which is okay. But definitely go check out Kelly's music, and the links in the YouTube description, so you can go look at things. She's on all the streaming platforms, and definitely go to YouTube to watch the videos, and then watch the premiere tomorrow. There's just so much going on with this talented artist that I can't say enough good things about her. Thank you very much. That means a lot.
Thanks. Have a good night, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.